Imagine having access to a tribe of mentors, experts in the biggest questions in tech. This is Making Revenue Tick. Hello and welcome to Making Revenue Tick. I am delighted to be joined this week by my good friend Neil Plant. Hello, Neil.
Hey, how you doing, Rich?
I'm good, you?
Yeah, perfect. Good to be here.
Good man. So we're talking about a big topic today, a very important topic in this marketplace, which is around dysfunctional teams. And we were just talking in the pre-chat about how much of a problem this is. Before we go into any kind of introductions, let's talk about the problem first of all. Why do you think there's so many dysfunctional teams in the market today?
Huge question. Well, we've got a tough market, right? You know, it's a very difficult time at the moment. And when you look at everything that's going on in the industry, you know, you've got lack of funding coming out of the VCs. You got terrible interest rates, although they did change yesterday. Right. It's just not a lot of investment. So, the decisions that are being made there's a lot, the stakeholder community that are dealing with deals is growing, right? So everyone's risk averse. Everyone wants bang for their buck. So I think it's just a little bit more difficult. And of course, when it becomes more difficult, you get more pressure or more people are asking for more from everybody. Leaders are looking down and squeezing people, and it just all gets a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, 100%, right? It's literally it's like a pyramid, right? Is that there's the macro market things that are going on. Less funding going in, valuations been down, LPs putting pressure on VCs because they're not making their money back, VCs putting pressure on founders putting pressures on senior leadership teams, senior leadership teams putting pressure on first line managers, and then the team get all of that change, pressure and uncertainty. So it takes an incredibly strong collaboration between all those different groups of people who all have their own different interests for the team environment to actually be quite healthy. And there are loads of great examples of that. And why I wanted to get you onto the podcast is because when we've been speaking and we've had a couple of great conversations now, I loved your approach to how you do this sort of stuff. You've got some brilliant experience, and you just see things in a very practical and useful way, which I thought would be a really great topic for us to share with people, because I reckon there's probably a bunch of people right now who are going, well, what do we do? It's really hard. There's all this complexity. We'd love to be doing all this stuff that we think we should be doing, but the reality is we've got a bunch of churn, bunch of problems in the team, some really bad performance that we need to try and remedy, and we just need some ways that we can think differently about the problem. So let's intro you to anyone who hasn't already had the pleasure of meeting you. Tell us a bit about who you are and the type of businesses that you've made a career out of helping.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, I've been in enterprise sales now, or SaaS-based sales now, for over 15 years. Worked for people like Oracle a couple of times, Adobe, SAP, Teradata. I've just fallen in love with complex selling and what it takes to do deals. I'm a problem solver by nature. I just love discovery. I'm curious. I just look at things and in a way where, how do we achieve the outcome that we're looking for? And that's whether it's a customer, that's whether it's we're trying to hit revenue numbers, or I've got my own target to hit, or whatever it is. And then from a leadership perspective, I've run a UK-based ESP in the past. I've worked for different MarTech vendors, focused on data as well and the analytical side of things. And I just love leadership. I love that. Like I say, I love that problem. How are we going to get from A to B, and all the complexities that sit within that. That you were just talking about.
Yeah, brilliant. So people can kind of understand how that relates to where they are in their companies and in the types of businesses they worked in. Could you give us an idea around the sizes of some of these businesses that you worked in, the size of the teams? Give us some scale so people can understand kind of part of the growth journey that you've got experience of.
Okay, so you heard some of the names I've just mentioned. They're pretty cool brands, right? So, what you're going to think is, oh, this guy's been involved with these really big enterprise businesses. And yeah, I've worked for them. And I have had a couple of roles where I've been part of that big engine. And what that means is that those sales roles or those sales leadership roles, they're quite narrow, right? You've got a very prescriptive, this is what you need to do. These are your roles and responsibilities. And the beauty about that is you have this huge support structure around you and all these different people that help you go and achieve what you are being asked to achieve.
Mm.
But I've also worked within some of those organizations for startup areas within those. So areas that the business hasn't done before, and they're asking you to be a little bit creative, go out there and go and try new things, go and put new processes in place. And then I've worked for some smaller or medium to small vendors where, they've been, 2 million in revenue, trying to grow, trying to get to like 10, 20 million. And then what does that look like? And the different challenges that are faced there when you don't have a big marketing brand that you can leverage. You're not in the room for every type of conversation that your company solves, right? It's not like being at Salesforce. You're in a CRM conversation or a MarTech conversation. You're likely going to be invited in unless you're perceived to be too expensive. Otherwise, right? It's not like that. It's very different. So you then have to go out and create. You might have to create a strategy. You might have to create content. It's sort of like rolling your sleeves up. It's about getting people to unite to kind of come together and deliver on that, really. So I suppose I'm quite lucky, really. I've had that big world experience and I've done very well there. And I've had, let's be a little bit more creative, and I've done very well there as well. So I'll answer your question.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously you started in as an IC, right? So you built up your career as an IC, then you've become a leader of teams. Yeah. How important has that building of skill set and experience as an individual contributor been to becoming an effective sales leader?
Experience is everything. You have to have been in conversations. You have to have been in deals. You have to have been asked to do all the different things as an IC. You have to have gone out, been creative, taken the knocks and the rejections to be in a position where you can be of value to those that are therefore going to go and do that. And it's funny, actually, in running the teams that I've run, one of the things, and I'm sure other sales leaders that are listening here will always be, trying to, or fielding conversations where people want to go up and they want to move fast and they want to get promoted and they want to do the next job. Actually, you need a bit of time doing the current job before you can go there, because otherwise you're gonna fail. You're gonna fall over. We're talking about complex selling. You might do a 5-year stint and not cover all the things that you might cover in all the sales you're ever going to do in your career. Right? You might miss real crucial steps just because the company buying didn't need that step to be covered. So you have no experience there. So there's a gap. So crucial. You have to do the hard slog to be able to move up. I believe, anyway. That's my take.
Well, I think it can't hurt, right? How long were you responsible for a number before you were responsible for people?
Oh, well, I mean, we go beyond the SaaS world. I mean, I've been selling for probably 20 years before I became a leader. I look young for my age, which is nice. But so I'd probably say twice the amount of selling time over versus when I've been a leader.
Yeah, sure. Well, you're only 21 now, so that's an incredible. You started at 1.
You're flirting with me.
Stop it. Just trying to get on your boat, mate.
Anytime.
So that's because it's interesting. It's funny because your experience is different from mine, but I can totally relate to what you're saying in terms of the importance. I had a different challenge. So I started off as a lead generation agent in 2007. It was SDR, but we called them like lead generation agents back in 2007. And so I did that for like a 9 months. Then I became a leader of that team.
Yep.
So I was still very hands-on, working with reps around like driving business, enterprise, sales development type stuff. Then I became an ops manager. So I was managing people. And it was only after about 7 years of being in leadership roles that then I became responsible for the revenue number as a business unit director. So then I took over the sales team. And as part of that training program, I hadn't actually sold anything. Never been on the front end of sales. So that we had a task to go and source some data, prospect, and then go and win a deal. And I was the first one of this group of 8 people that won a deal. And I felt really, really great about it. And then I got given the team. And the learning that I had and the gaps that were exposed around my ability to be a good coach to my account executives and account managers was huge. And I found it really painful. And that resulted in loads of missed forecasts and really painful moments. So I had a really strong leadership footing. But then I was much weaker on the sales side. So I know firsthand, whilst we had a brilliant culture and there's lots of things that I could bring over to be an okay sales leader, I was never as good as a sales coach and deal coach and developer of their sales skills as I should have been. So the organization actually changed structure. So I had a sales leader within then my team who was then responsible directly for those people, which made a big difference. But it was a massive gap. And there was a statistic I saw the other day, a good friend of mine called Nick Fewings, who is written a wonderful book about team leadership called Team Lead Succeed. And he told me a statistic which 85% of managers are accidental managers. So they've become managers just because it was like the next step rather than getting any kind of formal training to be managers. So I reckon you've probably got two sides, right? You've got people like me who were leaders and then got the responsibility of becoming sales. And then the other side, which is people who have been in sales, then getting the responsibility of people. And I think either way, you've got massive gaps.
Yeah.
Go on, what were you going to say?
There was a question coming. Apologies.
No, go for it. No, you had a reaction. I wanted to hear it. Go for it.
Well, look, why did you get that job in the first place, right? You said you were one of, you were asked to do something which was around the generation of business. Well, that's where you came from, right?
Sure.
So the fact that you had skills in there set you up perfectly to go out and get that job. Then you land in a position that, okay, I'm doing the ops piece. I can do that. I've been managing. I've been coaching. That's great. And then revenue comes in, and it's like, okay, well, this is new. Now that's not a bad thing, right? Because actually, then you've got to learn. Then all of a sudden the game's changed. You're in that uncomfortable situation, and often you can find that people can excel if they like that type of environment. Can excel through that, right? And so I'm not saying that can't be done. You've clearly absolutely done it. But then, of course, you then struggled with the element of the forecasting and being in some of the deals because you haven't had that. And I think that then is a power of having a good team around you, right? And you are only as good as the team around you, no question about it. You cannot do this on your own. Being a leader is not about doing it on your own. You can't. I can't scale a business if I'm involved in every single deal.
100%.
What do I need to do? I need to make sure that my people, and I don't want 10 nil plants, absolutely not, because people buy from people, and you might buy from me, but it doesn't mean the next person's going to buy from me. They might hate me, right? So, and you see that happening when you run a sales team. Some people gel, other people don't, right? And you can flip a salesperson, and all of a sudden, course corrects, and you end up getting a deal.
Sure.
I think being in uncomfortable situations is important, but having the right skills, doing the basics, listening, I think they're the things that, if you have a drive to succeed, then you'll get there, right? Don't that for a second.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely a rich learning experience.
Is everything.
Yeah, 100%. So when we're talking about dysfunction, then, because I know it was like a topic that you really cared about, and you've had a really great career around turning around dysfunctional teams and rallying them around, the cause that you're trying to drive them towards. When we talk about dysfunctional teams, what does that mean to you?
Okay. Low morale, misalignment of departments. So, marketing hitting numbers, sales not. How is that? How logically does that work? How, it's like, surely the targets for those two teams should be inherently, linked, right? and, where I've had the power to do so, and you don't always get that, right? So, depending on the control that you have, the type of role that you have, the trust of the business or the makeup of the business, you were very lucky, right? They were, okay, Rich, we're going to bring in some sales expertise and put them underneath you, and that supported you from that perspective.
Yeah.
That's great if you've got a business behind you that does that.
Sure.
Other things, lack of accountability. When you start talking to people, they're blaming everyone else. It wasn't my job, but that doesn't fall under what I should do.
Yeah.
For pipeline conversion, start looking at the data. What does that tell you? Low rep participation, long trailing sales cycles. You look at it in your CRM, and these opportunities haven't been updated properly, or there's detail missing. Just talking to people, and they, you get a feel. People, things. You get lots of sales guys that are really great at spinning things, of course. But if you're curious and you start to drive into the data, that dries up, and you can feel it. Things aren't going well. So then it's about, okay, well, how do we create a plan to turn that around, or how do we step away from those opportunities as well, right? Because that's really important. So many people are in the wrong deals, and so many. We talked about that pyramid. You mentioned the pyramid earlier. When you're under the cut, you're under the cosh, and the pressure's coming, and you don't have that pipeline. All of a sudden, the deals that you do have, the way you look at those versus if you had big pipeline, very different.
Sure.
Very different. And a salesperson will, they'll be in the wrong deals for the wrong reasons. And you got to kind of try and avoid that, right? Because you want to spend the little time you have, and you don't have a lot of time in selling. Time's the enemy. You need to be spending the right way. That's hard. And that also takes experience, which is learned.
That's interesting. So I definitely had to learn that the hard way. So as someone who's been successful as an enterprise salesperson, then you've coached salespeople, this attitude that you have towards qualifying out of the wrong deals to focus your time where it should be, whether that's actually going to get more of the right deals or closing the ones that you've got. What is your attitude towards qualifying out of deals versus qualifying in the right ones?
Okay, well, I would take it back a stage. And I'm looking. We've got sales processes, we've got sales methodologies. How you use them, you can use them to qualify in and qualify out. You can use them as leadership opportunities as well. A lot of the buyers that we face in the SaaS world, especially now, we're getting bigger stakeholder communities. They've not bought before, and you might think, oh, this guy's in charge, or this lady's in charge of this is a 2 million opportunity. They must know how they buy within their org. They don't. So sometimes you can provide leadership into that. But if we come back a step, for me, it's even more basic than that. I'm massively into enhanced listening, minimal extractors. I'm, that curiosity to understand, what is somebody actually saying to you? Do you understand? You're a salesperson. You're in front of a customer. You're trying to extract from them the issue that they have, and they're going to be guarded. They won't tell you everything. Well, how do you listen to them in such a way where you don't alienate them, you don't make them feel that you don't care? Quite opposite. How do you get to a point where you're starting to really understand their business? And then once you do that, you gain a level of trust to have a better conversations, right? And, for me, I've got a couple of mantras. I've got one's be curious, and the other is listen to understand, not to respond. And, as a young, and I see this so much in salespeople. So I'm sure there'll be people listening, and, it'll be something they do where you're listening to you're in with a customer, might be a new contact. You're listening to them, they say something, and all of a sudden you want to interject, right? So you jump in there and you say, yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's like the curse of the salesperson, right? Because you're trying to gain trust. You're trying to show that you belong in the room. You're trying to show that you're not a shady salesperson that's only interested in one thing. And actually you might be super genuine, but you're trying to show that you belong in the room. So what you do is you interject, you say something, and a couple of things happen there. You're not doing the things that you want really, because from the other side, if you put yourself on the person that's listening, what's actually happening is you're being rude. Right? You're not listening to them. Not actually. Do you care about what they're saying? The worst thing, right? The context of the sentence the statement that they're making changes with the last two words of the statement. And next thing, you base your pitch on what you thought they were saying, not what they were going to say, and you're out of it.
Sure.
So taking that step back for me, that listening piece, good discovery, getting right down to the real crux of the problem, because once you start to understand what's going on, then you can make a plan, then you can set a strategy, you can discuss internally with your, the people that are there to help you do the sale. That might be your manager, that might be your solutions consultant. You can start to build what is something that will actually be relevant and actually talk to the problems they've got. So I think, I'd take it back, and that's kind of, I like the basics to be done really well.
Where did you learn these skills?
Where did I learn these skills? I had some challenges when I grew up physically. So I spent quite a lot of time sat around watching things happening when I was in junior school, and when you can't participate, it's a subject we haven't spoken about, but when you can't participate, you have to listen, you have to watch, you see, you observe, and you see things happening that you wouldn't have seen if you were running around in it, and I think listening came from that. And then as I grew older, I kept making the same mistake. I kept trying to be the person that deserved to be in the room for whatever reason, and I kept seeing me fail. And it took a lot of self-reflection to say, right, okay, you need to stop. This isn't a cool way. This is not a cool way to try and handle these situations. So, for me, I've always been curious. I've just, like you talked about the boat earlier, I've just, anyone that follows me, they know I've just been, certifying and getting my licenses from a powerboat perspective. But, it's not about just speeding across the water and being able to handle a boat. Actually, it's way more than that. It's the safety of the navigation. It's safety for you, safety for your crew, your boat, all the different parameters, all the different things that winds, tides, there's so many things that need to be considered, taken into account, planned for. You've got to be curious, because if you're not curious, you're not going to get those things right, and then you're setting yourself up to fail. So whether you're sat there looking at writing a go-to-market plan, or you're sat there looking at doing your territory plan for the year, are you thinking about all the variables, right? Are you thinking about all those things? Are you planning for them? Are you looking at how you can be creative to overcome some of them? These are all things that you absolutely have to do. You absolutely have to spend time doing, because if you've not anticipated the things that are ahead, how are you going to navigate them? How are you going to be successful? How are you going to get past them? So, and if you don't listen, then how are you going to understand any of those parameters that might be in your vision, in your course over that horrible annual year for which your target is set, right? Because if you're not doing well, if things are not happening, if you're getting all those rejections, especially at a time like this, and you've got those pressures, it's a long, long year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the data is that 70% of people are missing target right now. And it does feel like life and death. In your boat analogy, the stakes are much higher. Particularly if you've got someone else on board and you feel responsible for them. Whereas in sales, it does feel like you're on a speedboat on choppy waters without uncertainty. If you haven't done your planning properly, and you're not aware and observing, then you're going to be in a really, really messy situation, and that would cause a huge amount of dysfunction.
And actually, again, I did a post, I was reflecting on the journey that I've recently been on, and, I put leadership down there as one of the hashtags, and, I'm there, and I only had one crewmate on this particular, but I'm there doing a full briefing, right? This is the plan. This is what we're looking to do today. These are the markers that we're aiming for, and this is how we read the bearings. This is the boat, right? What's on the boat? What are the things that we're going to have to do today, right? And a lot of this is mirroring leadership, right? We get these. This is what we're going to do this year. The sales kickoff, that whole rally thing at the start of the year. There's all these meetings that are happening at board level, at senior leadership level, and they never actually make it down to rep level, right? So, or to management level. So you've got people doing the best that they can with the skills that they've got and the experience that they've had in the past, not really aligned, and I'm sat on the, I'm there giving my briefing on the boat, and it's like, this is arguably the most important part of the day. It's making sure that that person that I'm responsible for knows what to do if something goes wrong, knows where things are if we need them, knows how to help me moor the boat. There's so, you mentioned to me, you got a history of boating with your father and him going crazy at you kids, whilst he's trying to land moor his, $1 million yacht or whatever, what, right? And it's going crazy because that whole communication piece, whether you're on a boat, whether you're leading a team, is so important. Are people aligned? Do they know what you're trying to do? Do they know how it's going to go? Have you thought about it? Do they understand? Right? Are they aligned? Are they on board with everything that we're going to do today? Right? Or this year or whatever it is, it's super, super important.
Yeah, that is clear. You'll probably laugh at this story, but I remember very vividly once when my dad was trying to park his not quite £1 million boat, but it was a really nice boat.
Yeah.
And then he shouted across to me, "Man the cleats." And I had no briefing. I was out for a jolly, probably having a beer on the front of the boat, to be really honest. And I remember thinking, I do not know what a cleat is, and like shouting back to him. And the situation escalated, and I didn't man the cleats. I didn't know what a cleat was. So yeah, I totally understand what you said. Anyway, let's bring it back. So I know you've got a bit of a process around this, right? And you see this as a puzzle. So when you're going into a business and you're looking for signs of like, you're looking to go and get a map of how things are going and a lay of the land and spotting those areas as dysfunction, what are the kind of things that you're looking for and asking about?
Okay. I think I put it down into to do two different areas, really. No, maybe three different areas. The first would be looking at data. I've never been one of those fortunate people that have landed in a sales team that's doing really well, and the person's retired or they moved on, and we've got this great team for you to be able to run. It's been that guy, really. I've been brought in, and it's been like, look, there's some problems here. That it needs energy to come into the team. They need to be reinvigorated, or it's just not working. So I think you got to look at the data first. There'll be loads of data within the business, or there might not be, but it depends on the stage. If they're really early, they're coming out of founder, they're just establishing a CRM. I've been there. They've got no sales process. I've been there. Then it's a little bit more difficult. But if you've got data, what is it telling you? I think is the first thing. Second would be talking to the people, right? You need to go and talk to those that are doing the job, how they're getting on. Talk to them about them. For me, the leaders that I've worked well under, and the ones that have taken a little bit of time to understand me, where I'm at, what I like doing, so I'm always looking to understand. And this might have come from my early recruitment days, right? What do you like to do? What do you dislike to do? What are the things you're good at? What are the things you don't think you're good at, right? And actually, you'll have these conversations, they shouldn't even be in sales. And they realize that, right? And part of being a good leader and a coach and a mentor is helping people find their journey as well, because sometimes you're on the wrong journey. And I've had that. I've gone into meetings, and the net result is we've come out of that meeting and we found that person a role in customer success, because they care more about looking after people than they do trying to get new people to talk to them. You talk to different departments as well. What do they feel the sales team is doing right and doing wrong? There's a lot of insight there. People can be very, very critical when it's one-to-one, right? And you can take that with a pinch of salt as well, because you've got different people in different times and stages of their career. So you just kind of collate this. You start to get a bit of an understanding of what's going on. And then I think the third one is looking at what's happening out there from a competitive perspective. Excuse me. So how are you viewed in the market as a business? What are you known for, your strengths and your weaknesses? Where do you sit amongst your competition? Why are they winning? versus you? Why do they have the market position that they have versus you? And then looking at, okay, well, what is our addressable market? What does that ICP that everyone talks, what does that look like, right? And then I think you bring those three things together, and that's when you start to be able to devise kind of what's wrong. So you're doing that discovery piece, you're doing the discovery around the data, you're being curious, you're trying to figure out what works, where's the business coming from, why is it coming from that, is that profitable or is it not if you're at that P&L level? Where are the people, what are they doing, what are they like, are they in the right roles, are they the right people for the stage which you're at? That's really important. If you know, an example, I spoke to a CEO, very successful, young, in his 30s, very successful, crossed continents, didn't speak a language. Fast forward a few years, he now runs a just under $1 billion SaaS business. And, talking to him about his EMEA region, and his EMEA region it's not struggling as such, but it's definitely struggling from a leadership perspective. And he's kind of 3 or 4 different leaders in the last 5 years. Right? They've come from Adobe, they've come from Salesforce, they've come from what was the other one? I forget the third one. They've come from big vendors, and of course they've come from big vendors, and this is a region that has 20 million.
Sure.
So, and it's not their primary region.
Yeah.
So, and they're not a big enough business to have all those support elements that we talked about earlier. So all of a sudden you've got these leaders that have got great pedigree, if you want to call it that. They're skilled at what they do, but they're in the wrong environment because that's not where they have found their success. That's not. Now they've got to be creative. They've got to, then that might be that content piece. That might be putting in processes. Have they ever purchased a sales tool? And what sales tool do they need to purchase? And why do they need to purchase that? And what are the considerations that go into that? Okay, once you've made that choice, how do you implement it? Okay, how are you going to get the processes within that piece of software to do what you want it to do? How are you going to get adoption from your team? There's so much that goes into this stuff. And no wonder, he's on his 3rd or his 4th person, because again, it's like, what stage are you at? What person do you need? And there's loads of this on the internet that you can read on LinkedIn. And, Adam, what's Adam saying?
Baker.
Adam Baker. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So I've known Adam for a few years now. He's offered me a couple of jobs. I feel really bad. Sorry, Adam, that I haven't said yes to you at the moment, but you're doing some exciting stuff. I think it's great. Adam talks a lot about that. I've heard him on podcasts and talking about the right people, the right stage, and it's really, really important. So I think if you start to put those 3 things together, then you start to figure out, okay, well, what could be needed? And then it's about doing something with that information, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you touched on so many interesting points there. I think that I saw another statistic, like I missed a statistic today, but we're being asked a lot by clients in this market to help them find founding salespeople, whether that's founding AEs or whether that's founding sales leaders. But like that first proper professional sales management layer and sales team to go alongside the founder as they transition out of founder-led sales into their next stage of growth. And consistently, the thing that they're looking for there is someone who's got experience of a particular growth stage that they're going to go after.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people have made the mistake now, particularly if they are under the pressure of VCs, to go and like choose someone that's a safe bet because they've got that bigger experience, but they're used to a completely different level of resource at that level, So it's like, I talked the other day about this, see what you think of this phrase. A lot of the time we're attracted to someone because of the resources they have, but at the earlier stage, someone's resourcefulness is much more important.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, fully agree with that. It just talks to everything I've just said, right? It's, that safe bet isn't necessarily the big person that's been successful and done 3 years worth of, in that situation, you might want the person that didn't do well year 1, but it started to turn year 2 and it got really good year 3 because, let's go to football, right? And I'm a Man United fan I'm Southern, so that obviously makes me a Man United fan, but I've been a Man United fan for many, many years, and I think Ron Atkinson was at the helm they're now starting to understand my age. But if you look at Sir Alex, for example, arguably the best manager, that's, some people argue Pep, right? But, I think it was his 4th season before he won his first trophy, and that was, and he won his first Premier League, all the titles it came in the 6th season. And if you were a fan or you were old enough back then, you'll know that he was treading thin ice before, even after winning the FA Cup, right? He was treading thin ice before that 6th title came.
Yeah.
But what he'd been doing is those previous years, he'd been putting the right processes in place. He'd been putting the right team or shuffling and gaining the right people in the right positions to set him up for what he felt the future was going to be. Then you have to go out and find the other people, right? Success at a scalable level takes time. It takes time. You look at anyone that's been super, super successful, and they've had that time to be able to do it. Yet we've got this culture in this tech environment that we live in of, and people, you're in a job 18 months, you're in a job 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
If you've got somebody that's been in a job 10 years, well, then there's another argument that said, are they institutionalized? Have they seen it? So which one do you want? Which one is right for you? It's, again, how do people look at it? You look at how people get interviewed these days. It's awful. You have 30-minute slots with senior leadership team, or you've got to do a presentation on how you're going to change their business. Well, how do you know what their business needs within 4 30-minute conversations? I mean, it's, no wonder there's a lot of these roles that, you're getting the wrong people because you've not given them the time. And I get it, it's competitive, and but you have to give some, I believe, to, you have to be able to understand. Go back to what I said. You have to be able to understand what it is, you're dealing with, whether that's me looking to understand a business or whether it's them looking to understand me and people like me. It's
100%. You've touched on a very powerful point there. I think the amount of people who will be listening to this and they've either taken people through those interview processes and going, well, we're not getting it right. Is there something wrong with the caliber of people coming through that probably not looking at their own process, right? And there's loads who've gone through those interviews and I've been asked to produce, 180-day plans. And I'll be really honest, when I started doing recruitment, I was asking people to do 180-day plans. And I realized the quality of the output was so poor and it was so off the mark, but they just didn't have the context. So stopped doing that because I think it's ridiculous. And we test now for particular skills, characteristics, attitudes and behaviors that we know marry up really well to the stage that we're at. So we'll help people to design scorecards around a criteria. Yeah. And then the task is something very generic with all of the information, because if you're asking people to produce, please, founders, executives, if you're asking people to produce business plans, marketing plans, 180-day plans, stop. Because they need much more input than you're going to go and give them. And how many of those plans will have enough information to actually even be useful? So therefore, a good use of your time and a good use of their time is incredibly low. So there's a better way of doing things. But yeah, you touched on a fantastic point there, Neil. Why do you think, why is that a thing? Why do you think it's a thing?
I do kind of get it. They're also gaining ideas along the way, right? They're getting different leaders to give them ideas on what to do and how to do it.
Yeah.
I was going to be offered a job at one point, and someone was going to be brought in above me. It was before that, so at a CEO level, this was where typical VC, moving the founder aside, reached that stage where that creativeness had not run its course, but it was a point now where the business needed structure. So let's bring in a CEO, let's bring in that sales expertise to go out and kind of do that. And I was told by the chairman that, we're going to offer you, but we just need you to have this conversation with this new CEO, just tick the box both sides. And that CEO asked me, he said, can you build me out a plan for 3 years? And so I then spent 2 days building out a plan. Now, I'd spent a lot of time. They'd been courting me for maybe 5 months at the time. Yeah. So I knew quite a lot about the business. And ultimately that got me the green light on that. So it can help people get into roles as well, right? But I think the best interview I had, which I thought was really, really, it was really powerful. Again, Mr. Baker. And he got me in to do a deal review with his whole entire sales team. So there must have been 18 people in the room. And it was real world, right? This is, okay, how will this guy, work with my sales team, right? Will they respond to him positively?
Yeah.
How do you look at a deal, right? So it was me chatting to the AE of this particular big deal that they were working on at the moment. Again, I went through discovery. Right, tell me a little bit about this, right? These are the type of things that I would like to understand. And you don't need to know them all. It's okay. This is, the first time we're having a conversation, but these are the type of things I want to know. And out the back of that, once we've had this, we'll have some points where we can go and improve, and we can go and find out some new things. And this is where I think your deal is today. I think these are the areas you should have some concern about, and I think these are the areas you should draw some very positives about.
Yeah.
Would I be forecasting it as a deal in the next 5 weeks? Probably not. And these are the reasons why. If you these in place, then I think there's going to be a much better chance. And what happened in that that's how that session went. But what happened was the whole team bought into me, right? And I got an understanding of what the team was like and how they talked amongst themselves and how together and the type of things that they did. So that was really, really positive from that perspective.
Sure.
For me, that's what you want to know. You want to know, does the individual, does this individual, how are they when they're with the team? How do they talk about deals? How do they manage that piece? Because that's really, really important for me. Nobody knows everything, right? So the more heads you've got to work on something, the better. Ultimately, the buck stops with the person that has the responsibility to lead, and then that's when you have to take your decisions and stand by them. Where possible, do them collectively.
Yeah, I love that. I love that example because it's super practical. You're getting to meet the team, which is a massively important step. Where I see these things going wrong, particularly in larger businesses where they've got all this, red tape and process that's been designed over time, often really far away from the people who need the result, is that it's like a brief that gets sent to someone. They don't even have a phone call where they get talked through the brief because they want it to be like exactly the same that everyone gets, so it's totally fair. So they prepare in secret from a brief that they've not had any context on, and then they deliver it in a really specific time slot where it's not this interactive session. It's like, we deliver it, this is your delivery slot, and then here's a feedback slot. But they've already made their decision, and often you don't even get a chance to do discovery. So I totally agree. I love that example. Let's wrap up with a really practical focus now for people listening, right? So we've talked a load about the dysfunctions, the way that you would approach it, some really, really great examples of things that you've done. Let's talk about really practical things that a business owner, a founder, or an executive inside one of those businesses can do to try and turn around dysfunction, to rally teams out of dysfunctional environments. What are some of those very practical things that you've done before that have worked that they can give a go to themselves?
Okay. The best example that comes to mind of rallying a sales team is I was working for a company called Teradata at the time. I had a team of, when I joined, there were 5 or 6. That team, I took that team up to 9 or 10 at the end. I can't remember the exact head count. And literally went through that whole discovery piece. First of all, what is it to do? All the things that we've talked about today. Okay. But for me, I had the group, this group of individuals that they'd been rudderless, they'd been leaderless for a while, and there was poor business coming in. There was some business being unwritten, which is like the absolute worst thing in a SaaS, is sacrilege. So there was a lot of things going wrong, and the morale was really low and really poor. So I'm asking this question because you said sales team.
Yeah,
for me, it was like, okay, how do I turn these individuals into a team? And I put, I'm I'm big on enablement as well. So we put some processes in place. We started to do some enablement, a lot of peer-to-peer role plays and all this sort of stuff. But how do I get these contributors to start working together so that that outcome that we're trying to deliver as a team, we're doing it? And the problem is, in the phase that we were at, we're almost starting again, right? So we're not going to have immediate wins. How do I make that period before the immediate wins? How do I make that a happy place to be in? How do I help them find things to celebrate? And what I like to do, and this is just a good example, but I've done it in every team bar one. So I'm in a room together, and I said, right, what I want you to do, guys, is I want you to spend the next couple of hours, and you might think a couple of hours is too long. Trust me, you're going to be back and forth on this, and I'll pop in an hour to see how you're getting on. I want you to think of 3 to 5 things that you guys that are important to you around what you can achieve during this year, based on everything you know about what happened last year and what's been happening at the start of this year. You know, who you are as a team, how you're viewed in the business. So anyway, fast forward, a couple of hours later, the 4 things that they came up, completely blew my mind, right? My only stipulation, they did not, they were not around your fiscal responsibility that was set by that you cannot change. And they sold a solution which was, I think the average deal value was sort of 78K at the time, and we worked in we were a small applications business within Teradata, and Teradata did like big deals. They were doing data warehouse, huge deals, and I think my team felt like they were looked down on as this kind of mid-market team. Mm-hmm. And number one thing that they wanted to achieve was to drop that stigma of being looked upon as a mid-market deal. So we'll just talk about that one thing in particular. Well, now, okay, well, what are the things that we're going to do to be able to change that? And actually giving that responsibility to 1 or 2. So like, they came out with 4 points. Point 1 was covered by 2 of them. Yeah. Point 2 was covered by some. So again, giving them accountability, making them part of their own journey, because they've just created this journey themselves. This is something that they want to do as a team. And, we more than doubled the average order value that year. We did some absolutely fabulous wins. We did some great logos sold to people like Puma, Vets for Pets, and financial institutions that were really good. We did a huge deal with Argos, which is kind of like the biggest deal that we'd ever done in our history, 15-year history, is this apps business. Yeah. And what was really cool was at the end of it, we were bought by a VC. So Teradata sold it. And I got the opportunity, because it was a nice out, and I got the opportunity to bring those 4 things up at the end of that journey. Yeah. And you know what? They'd hit 3 out of 4 of those. And the one that they hadn't hit, they hadn't got to hitting it. They were ahead of the game in terms of it, but we weren't, these changes don't happen like at the end of the financial year. They happen when they happen. Yeah. We just weren't there, but they'd done all 4 of them, and how they felt off the back of that, how they worked, how I saw people step up and be better than they had been because they had extra responsibility. They had things that they needed to lead on. It was just fun to watch, really to watch. So I think, if you are someone out there, how do you get that team engaged? How do you get them working together? What are the things you can do to do that? Your job's to do the strategy. Your job is to figure out what your problems are. Your job is to work out what it is you need. But you also, how do you bring that team of people that you have already? How do you get them to sign up to it? How do you get them to bring their best every day? Yeah. I don't know. That answer it? I mean,
I think it's genius. You're giving people the ability to challenge the identity that they've built, which is like a massive source of discomfort. People, number one, desire us to be understood, and then people want to be respected and feel significant, all those things. You've given them an opportunity to find a collective outcome that they're working towards, which the result of working towards those things increases your, average order value, the quality of the wins, all those sorts of things. I think is absolutely brilliant. So look, I tell you what, Neil.
You've also got to do that, right? You've also got to give people the opportunity to enjoy their minutes. Yeah. And if it's a slog every day, if people don't want to get up and come to work every day, if they don't feel like they're part of something, if they feel that they're bottom of that triangle and that pressure is just raining every day,
No, that's not fun.
Right, because your customers are going to feel that. The other employees are going to feel that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I love it. Good man. Well, look, thank you very much, Neil. It's been an absolute pleasure. If anyone wants to get hold of you, would LinkedIn be the best place?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I think the phone number's on there, but
yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes as well, which is perfect.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you're a sales leader and you want a peer to talk to, yeah, get in touch. If you're, I help a lot of salespeople from a mentoring perspective because they're trying to achieve things they haven't done. Sure, get in touch. If you're an SVP or you're a founder or you're a CEO and you've got some of the issues that we've talked about, and look, I'm open to work at the moment anyway, and I think it's always good to talk. So yeah, please get in touch. No, of course.
Good man, Neil. Thank you so much for your time. To everyone else that's listening, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this conversation, we've got a newsletter called Growth Magnet on LinkedIn, where we take the best insights from all of these episodes and turn them into bite-sized format for you to enjoy.